What happens when the CEO checks into his own hotel and catches the manager treating a guest like garbage right in front of him? Graham Bishop stood outside the double-glass doors of the downtown hotel, luggage in hand, blending in like any other traveler. The late summer heat clung to his shirt, but he didn't mind. He hadn't stepped foot inside this location in over 3 years. It was one of 7 hotels his father had left him, each in a different major city, and he'd spent most of his time managing from their headquarters 2 states over. He remembered when they opened this one. It was sleek, modern, and had a rooftop bar that made local news. But recently he'd been hearing silence. No complaints, no praise. Just flat numbers and empty reports. Something felt off. So he decided to go see it for himself. No entourage, no clipboard, just a fake name, dyed brown hair, glasses, and a beard that aged him 5 years. He wore a faded navy hoodie and jeans. No one would recognize him. The staff had changed a lot over the years, and this particular location had gone through 2 general managers since the last time he visited. He walked in casually. The front lobby looked clean, maybe too clean. Shiny floors, but cold. No music. No warmth. A tall woman behind the desk barely looked up. Checking in, she asked flatly. "Yeah. Graham Blake," he said, using the alias he'd booked online. She typed something into her computer. "King Suite, 2 nights. ID and card." He handed them over. She said nothing else. No welcome. No smile. He took the keycard and walked toward the elevator. Just as the doors were closing, a voice called out. "Hey! Hold that!" a woman yelled. Graham held the door. A young mother rushed in, holding a toddler in one arm, dragging a suitcase with the other. The little boy was crying. "Thank you," she said, out of breath. "Long day." Graham smiled politely. The elevator dinged at the 4th floor. They both stepped out. She walked one way, he went the other. But around the corner, he heard voices. Heated. "I told you already, we don't do early check-ins. You can wait in the lobby or go somewhere else. I've been traveling since 3 in the morning." The woman's voice trembled. It was the same one from the elevator. "He hasn't eaten and it's over 100 degrees out. That's not my problem," said a man's voice, sharp and loud. "Check-in is at 3. "It's not 3. Graham rounded the corner and froze. A tall man in a dark suit stood with his arms crossed, glaring at the woman and her son. The kid clung to her leg, sniffling. "I'm not asking for an upgrade," she said softly. "Just to get into the room a little early so he can rest." "You think I haven't heard that one before? Look around. We're full. Staff's running behind. You want special treatment? Book somewhere else next time." Graham's chest tightened. He stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "Is there really no way to help her out? It's not even that busy." The manager turned, eyes narrowing. "Are you staff?" "No," Graham said. "Just a guest." "Then stay out of it," the man snapped. "You don't see the whole picture." Graham clenched his jaw. He wanted to say more. Instead, he watched as the woman turned away, holding back tears, and led her son back toward the lobby. The manager walked off in the other direction. Graham stood alone in the hallway, heart pounding. He didn't even know the man's name yet. But he knew one thing: this wasn't how his father built the business. And it sure as hell wasn't how he was going to run it. Within 10 minutes, Graham returned to the front desk. The woman was sitting near the window, rocking the boy in her lap. "Ma'am," he said gently. She looked up, suspicious, then softened when she recognized him. "I'm sorry that happened. I'll make things right." She gave a tired nod. Graham walked to the back office, where the front desk woman had disappeared earlier. He knocked. The same manager opened it. "What now?" the man asked, annoyed. Graham looked him in the eye. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. I'll be here." The man scoffed. "Yeah? You a travel blogger or something?" Graham didn't answer. He just walked away. He returned to his room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. His father would have fired that guy on the spot. But Graham wanted to understand what was really going on. Why was the staff short? Why was no one stepping in? Why did this place feel so cold? He needed answers. And he was going to get them starting tomorrow. At 6:15 the next morning, Graham sat in the breakfast lounge nursing a burnt cup of coffee from the lobby machine. He hadn't slept much. Every hour, he replayed what he'd seen in the hallway, the manager's tone, the child's frightened face, the look of defeat in the mother's eyes. That wasn't a one-off. That was someone who'd grown comfortable treating people like problems. The breakfast area was quiet. A few guests trickled in, grabbing cereal or toast. There was no staff presence. The trays were low, and the coffee had clearly been sitting since before sunrise. Graham watched a man in a suit circle the buffet twice, frown, and walk out empty-handed. He waited 10 more minutes, then stood and walked behind the front desk. The same woman from the day before sat at the terminal, tapping at her phone with one hand and clicking through screens with the other. Her badge read Carly. "Morning," he said. She glanced up, not recognizing him. "Check out." "No. Just wanted to ask, do you guys have a breakfast attendant?" She exhaled. "Supposed to." She called out again. "4th time this month." "Manager says we're not hiring until corporate finishes the budget review." "Who's covering the floor then?" Carly shrugged and turned back to the screen. Graham left the desk and took the elevator down to the staff level. The hallway was dim, the carpet stained in patches. He passed a utility closet, then pushed open a door labeled housekeeping staff only. Inside, 2 women were folding towels at a breakneck pace. One was middle-aged, the other barely out of her teens. Both looked up startled. "Sorry," Graham said. "Didn't mean to barge in." The older woman narrowed her eyes. "You lost or something?" "No. I'm a guest. Just had a question. You two doing all the rooms?" The younger one looked to the older woman before nodding. "Today?" "Yeah. It's just us." "How many rooms?" 37 checkouts, the older one said. "And a few stayovers, but we're not touching those today." "No time." Graham looked at the pile of sheets on the floor. "That's not sustainable." The older woman barked a dry laugh. "Tell that to the guy upstairs in the tie." "Do you get breaks?" 15 minutes. Technically. But we don't take them. If we stop, we fall behind and then get yelled at." Graham glanced around. There were no fans, no music, just fluorescent buzz and silence. "Have either of you spoken to HR?" The younger woman answered. "HR doesn't return calls. We leave voicemails. No one comes back." Graham nodded slowly. "Thanks. I'm not trying to cause trouble. Just trying to understand." "We've had people quit mid-shift," the older woman said. "One girl left her card in the hall and walked out. Didn't even clock out." Graham stepped back into the hallway, heart heavy. He walked the service corridor, noting cracks in the tile, a leak near the ice machine, then exited into the rear stairwell. It smelled like mildew. By the time he reached the lobby again, guests had started lining up at the front desk. Only Carly stood behind it. A man in a blue polo raised his voice. "I've been waiting 20 minutes for someone to bring up towels. No one answers the phone." Carly didn't look up. "Housekeeping is short today." "This isn't my problem," the man snapped. "I'll bring them up," Graham said quickly. "What room?" "For 20, the man muttered. Graham went to the linen closet behind the desk, grabbed 2 clean towels, and took the elevator up. When he returned, Carly didn't say thank you. She didn't even look at him. He stepped back as the manager from the day before, tall, suited, and impatient, emerged from the side office. His badge read Marcus. Marcus scanned the lobby, then turned to Carly. "Where the hell is James?" "Didn't show," she said without emotion. "And you didn't think to call someone in?" "No one's taking extra shifts anymore." Marcus swore under his breath, then turned toward the hallway. Graham followed. "Excuse me," Graham called out. Marcus stopped without turning. "You again?" "I am. And I want to know why your staff is doing 3-person work with 2 people and no support." Marcus finally turned. "Because we're not a charity. We don't run this place on feelings. There's a staffing freeze. If someone calls out, we adapt." "Adapt?" "Your housekeepers are skipping breaks just to keep up. The breakfast station's empty. And that front desk girl's drowning." Marcus crossed his arms. "You think I don't know how this works? I've been managing hotels for 15 years. You get soft. They walk all over you." Graham said nothing for a moment, then asked, Do you ever work a shift on their side? Just one day a month. Marcus laughed. Why would I? I delegate. That's what managers do. Graham's jaw tightened. What about that woman from yesterday? The one with the kid? Marcus rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. Every week it's someone with a sob story. You let one in early, the next thing you know, you're running a daycare. She wasn't asking for charity. She was asking for decency. Marcus took a step forward. Look, buddy. I don't know who you think you are, but this isn't your hotel. I've been brought in to cut waste and maintain order. If you don't like how we do things, write a review online. Maybe someone will care. The moment was sharp, silent. Graham didn't react. Not yet. Instead, he left the hallway and walked toward the elevators again. He took the stairs to the rooftop bar, which opened at noon. It was locked now. He stood there, gazing out over the city skyline. The hotel had been a beacon once, a place for travelers to feel human. Now it was a machine squeezed tight by someone who thought efficiency meant cruelty. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to his assistant 3 states away. Find HR files for Marcus. I want full employment history. And I want contact info for every staff member on this team. Priority. He didn't need another day. He'd seen enough. But he wasn't done. He still had one more thing to do before he revealed who he was. That night, he changed out of his guest clothes and put on a plain black polo with the hotel logo stitched on the chest. He found an unassigned name badge in the back office, Evan, and clipped it on. Then he walked into the kitchen. The cook was a stocky man with tired eyes and a faded tattoo sleeve. He looked up, surprised. You're new. Just helping out tonight, Graham said. Figured you could use a hand. The man shrugged. Sure. You know how to use a fryer. Enough. They worked in the back for 2 hours. The orders weren't complicated, mostly bar snacks for the few guests who wandered up. Graham watched closely. He noticed the worn-out equipment, the lack of inventory, the way the cook had to improvise with missing ingredients. You ever tell management about this? He asked quietly. The cook snorted. Yeah. Marcus told me to get creative. You get overtime? Only if I clock it. But if I do, I get written up for inefficiency. Graham's grip tightened on the fry basket. At 10:30, he wiped down the counter, thanked the cook, and left the kitchen. He passed through the lobby one last time. Carly was still at the desk, eyes heavy, scrolling through a screen. Marcus was nowhere in sight. The hotel was running but barely. And tomorrow it was going to change. Graham arrived early, wearing the same staff polo he'd borrowed the night before. He stepped through the employee entrance near the loading dock unnoticed. The hallway buzzed with activity. 2 housekeepers pushed carts silently, a maintenance man replaced a flickering light overhead, and a younger employee struggled to balance a stack of folded linens. He followed the corridor to a small break room tucked behind the laundry area. Inside, 3 employees sat at a battered table eating quietly. One of them, an older man with silver hair and heavy eyelids, looked up. Never seen you before. You knew. Graham nodded. Just covering shifts this week. The man pointed at the coffee pot. Don't touch that unless you want to taste regret. Graham smiled faintly and sat across from them. A woman in her 20s with a long braid and name tag that read Nora was scrolling through her phone. Breakfast station still down? He asked. She looked up. Yeah. We stocked it ourselves this morning. No one's scheduled to run it anymore. The third person, a man in his 30s with a limp, added, management says the front desk can keep an eye on it between guests. Like they don't already have 6 things going on. Graham leaned forward. Anyone ever tell Marcus it's not working? They all laughed, dry and low. Nora spoke first. Marcus doesn't listen. Last time someone brought up the schedule, he called it an attitude problem and cut their hours the next week. The man with the limp nodded. He told me once to walk faster or get out. I've got nerve damage. I told him that. He said, not my issue. Graham held his expression steady, but inside, his pulse had quickened. He stood up, thanked them, and walked out. By 10, the lobby was filling up. A group of guests from a business conference stood near the elevators, waiting for rooms to be cleaned. At the front desk, Carly looked pale and overwhelmed. Her voice cracked as she answered calls, printed receipts, and tried to explain the delay to a couple that had clearly lost patience. Graham stepped behind the desk, standing just far enough to observe. Carly didn't acknowledge him. The phone rang again. She picked up, barely managing a greeting. Yes, I understand. We're trying to get rooms ready, but we're short-staffed today. No, I can't guarantee early check-in. Sir, she hung up abruptly and pressed her forehead to her hand. Graham stepped forward. Want me to handle the line? She didn't look at him. It won't matter. They'll just yell at you instead. I can take it. She moved aside and Graham stepped up. The first guest in line, an older man in a blazer, launched into a complaint about his missing wake-up call. Graham listened, apologized, and offered a voucher for breakfast. The man accepted it, grumbling as he walked off. Carly watched him. You're not just some temp, are you? He met her eyes. Not exactly. She narrowed hers but said nothing. That afternoon, Graham asked one of the housekeepers, Nora, from earlier if he could shadow her during her rounds. She hesitated. You sure? It's not exactly glamorous. I'm sure. They spent 3 hours together. She moved fast but not carelessly. She had a system stripping beds in one trip, loading the cart strategically, checking the bathroom first to avoid missing anything. At one point, she stopped and pressed her hand to her lower back. How long have you been working here? He asked. Since I was 19. 5 years now. Ever get promoted? She laughed once. Marcus said if I wanted a raise, I should have gone to college. They reached a room that hadn't been touched since a bachelor party checked out. It was a mess, bottles on the floor, food on the carpet, towels piled everywhere. Nora let out a long breath. This'll take an hour by itself. And I've got 8 left. Graham grabbed a trash bag and started picking up. She didn't stop him. When they finished, she looked at him differently. You're not like the others. He nodded. I've worked in worse. She gave him a quiet, grateful glance. At 4, Graham returned to the lobby. Marcus was standing near the elevators with a clipboard, speaking to a sharply dressed woman in heels. She looked irritated. You told me the suite had a view, she said. Marcus flipped a page. It does. Partial city. It's of a parking lot. He didn't flinch. That's the city. Technically. She walked away without another word. Graham approached. Busy day? Marcus turned. You again. What do you want? Just checking in. Marcus looked him over. You've been snooping around all day. Talking to housekeeping, front desk, kitchen. You think you know something? I know enough. All right, Marcus said, folding his arms. Let me guess. You're one of those secret shopper types. Corporate sent you to nitpick. Graham stepped closer. No. I'm the owner. Marcus blinked. What? My name is Graham Bishop. I own this property. And I've spent the last 2 days watching you run it into the ground. For a moment, Marcus didn't speak. Then he laughed short and sharp. You're serious. I am. Marcus took a step back. Look, I didn't know. That's clear. Graham's voice was calm, but cold now. You've been cutting staff, ignoring complaints, and treating employees like machines. You humiliated a guest in front of me yesterday. A woman traveling alone with a child. You spoke to her like she was an inconvenience. And you never even learned her name. Marcus opened his mouth, but Graham kept going. You've ignored maintenance issues, refused to approve basic overtime, and retaliated against employees who spoke up. That's not leadership. That's failure. Look, I was following the numbers. We were told to cut costs. You were told to lead. Instead, you created a culture of fear. Marcus's voice rose. You think it's easy? Running a place like this without a full team. It's not supposed to be easy. That's why we hire people with judgment, compassion. You don't have either. Graham turned to Carly, who had stepped out from behind the desk, watching. Carly, he said. Can you call security? Marcus will be leaving the property today. Permanently. Her eyes widened. Right now? Yes. Marcus's face flushed. You can't just, you're finished. Security arrived within minutes. Marcus didn't speak again. He walked out without looking back. Graham turned to the few staff members who had gathered near the desk. I'm staying through the weekend, he said. We'll be making some changes starting tonight. No one clapped. No one cheered. But there was a shift to silent, cautious kind of relief. Later that evening, Graham sat in the small staff meeting room with a notepad and a laptop. One by one, he invited employees in. He didn't lecture. He asked questions. What do you need to do your job better? What's broken that no one's fixing? How can we make this place feel human again? Answers poured in. Some were small, more carts, better gloves, working radios. Others were bigger, predictable schedules, team leads who actually trained people, basic respect. He wrote down every word. That night, he sent a message to his regional director with a list of immediate authorizations. He approved overtime for the weekend, scheduled emergency maintenance, and arranged for a staffing agency to send temporary help. But he didn't promise miracles. They would rebuild slowly with the people who had stayed. The ones who had every reason to quit but didn't. He went to bed just past midnight. Not in the King Suite he had reserved under his alias, but in one of the employee bunk rooms on the service level. He had work to do in the morning, and this time he wouldn't be watching from a distance. Saturday morning began with the low hum of vacuums and the steady thump of carts rolling over carpet seams. Graham stood just inside the service hallway, clipboard in hand, hair still damp from a quick rinse in the employee locker room. The air smelled faintly of bleach and overripe bananas from a forgotten break room fruit tray. He had asked the overnight shift to leave notes for him, any incidents, missing supplies, things they didn't have time to fix. There were 6 sticky notes taped to the back office door. One reported a jammed elevator button. Another said a guest had waited 40 minutes for extra pillows that never arrived. He read every one, then tucked them into a folder. Nora passed by, wheeling her cart with practiced precision. "You good for linens today?" he asked her. "We'll manage," she said, not slowing. "Thanks for those new vacuum filters. Didn't expect that to happen overnight." "You asked." "I listened." She gave a quick nod and turned the corner. Graham stepped into the back office where the interim front desk lead, a soft-spoken man named Luis, was reviewing room assignments. He had taken over the role temporarily after Graham asked Carly if she was more comfortable returning to strictly clerical duties for now. She had agreed. There was no point in forcing leadership on someone who hadn't been trained for it. Luis looked up from the screen. "We've got 22 turnarounds. I split the list evenly and gave the larger suites to the senior staff. But if housekeeping doesn't get a third pair of hands, we'll be behind by 3. "Someone from the agency's coming at 10, Graham said. "Name's Kelsey. She's worked in hotel housekeeping before. Just have her shadow Nora today." Luis nodded and returned to his screen. As Graham stepped out to the lobby, he spotted a man in his 40s sitting in one of the lobby chairs near the window, tapping his foot, arms crossed tightly. His eyes scanned the room, then locked onto Graham. "You the manager on duty?" "Yes." The man stood. "I've been trying to get someone to fix the AC in my room since last night. It's blowing hot air. I've called 3 times. Nothing." Graham kept his voice steady. "What room?" 307. "Give me 15 minutes. I'll get it handled." The man didn't thank him, just muttered something under his breath and sat down again. Graham walked to the maintenance closet. The door was open, and inside, the maintenance tech, a wiry man with a shaved head and grease under his fingernails, was hunched over an open toolbox. "Have you looked at 307? "Yeah. Late last night. Fan motor's dying. I logged it, but I didn't have the part." "Did you let the guest know?" "I told Carly before shift change. Figured it'd get passed along." "It didn't." The tech nodded once. "I'll grab a portable unit from storage. That'll hold them over till I swap the motor Monday." "Good. Make sure you apologize when you get up there." "Will do." As he left, Graham caught sight of a woman in a gray pantsuit walking through the main entrance. She walked with a careful, measured pace and held a slim leather folder under one arm. Her badge, clipped to her blazer, identified her as an HR field auditor. He walked over. "You must be Jenna." "I'm Graham." She shook his hand. "Thanks for looping me in." I've got everything you asked for. Wasn't easy, but I pulled Marcus's file, too. They stepped into the side office near the elevators where he closed the door behind them. She opened the folder and started flipping pages. You were right to flag him. 3 formal complaints in the last 18 months. All closed without follow-up. What kind of complaints? Retaliation, verbal harassment, and failure to accommodate medical restrictions. The last one was filed by a desk clerk who had a documented anxiety condition. Marcus scheduled her for overnight shifts back-to-back and wrote her up when she had a panic attack. Graham looked down at the desk. Why wasn't he removed sooner? Regional manager 2 levels up was protecting him. They were close. That manager left the company 3 weeks ago. That's when the paper trail hit my desk. He nodded. It's handled now. I terminated him yesterday. She closed the folder. That was the right call. He walked her back to the lobby. As she left, Carly caught his eye from the desk, gesturing discreetly. He walked over. There's a woman in the lounge asking to speak with the GM, she said quietly. Graham frowned. Did she say about what? She won't say. But she's not yelling. Just sitting there. He stepped into the lounge area. A woman in her late 20s sat near the window, a tablet in her lap, hair pulled back into a tight bun. She wore a soft blue blouse and had the kind of posture that suggested she wasn't afraid of confrontation but didn't seek it either. Can I help you? He asked. You're the acting GM? Yes. I was here 2 months ago, she said. I was interviewing for a front desk position. I was told to come in for a second interview. I showed up, waited half an hour, and then Marcus told me I wasn't a fit for the property image. Graham's stomach turned. Did he elaborate? He said the front desk was the face of the hotel, that they needed someone who looked more polished. I was wearing a tailored suit. Graham sat down across from her. I'm sorry. That never should have happened. I didn't come to complain. I came to see if anything had changed. I saw the news that management shifted. You still looking for work? I am. Come back Monday. We'll set up a formal interview. And this time, we'll evaluate you based on your qualifications, not your appearance. She looked at him for a long, quiet moment before nodding slowly. By early afternoon, the new agency cleaner had arrived and was working alongside Nora. Graham checked in with them briefly before heading upstairs to inspect the 4th-floor hallway. The carpet had been shampooed the day before and the air smelled faintly of lemon instead of sweat. A guest walking by gave him a polite nod. At the end of the hallway, he paused outside room 420, the one where he'd delivered towels 2 days earlier. There had been no new complaints. He knocked gently. A man in his 60s opened the door, blinking at him in surprise. You're the guy who brought me towels. Yes, sir. Well, I just wanted to say thanks. Room's been spotless since. Staff's been friendly. Didn't expect that kind of turnaround. Glad to hear it. Place feels different. More awake. Graham nodded once. We've still got a ways to go. But we're getting there. As the sun dipped low, he gathered the department leads in the small meeting room behind the front desk. Luis, Nora, the maintenance tech, and the kitchen cook all sat around the table. Carly stood near the door, arms crossed lightly. Graham didn't use a projector. He kept the lights on and spoke plainly. We're not going to fix everything in a week. I know things have been hard, but I'm not here to make promises I can't keep. No one interrupted. I've approved overtime for critical shifts, brought in temp help for the next 2 weeks, and started the process to backfill key positions. But more important than numbers is how we treat each other. That starts now. The cook leaned forward. Is this permanent? You sticking around? I'll be here for the next month. After that, I'll assign someone to lead who's earned the trust of this team. Won't be someone from the outside. Nora looked up from her notepad. Are we allowed to recommend people? Absolutely. Luis cleared his throat. And the way things were before? That's not coming back. Not a chance. The room was silent for a moment. Then Carly, still leaning near the door, spoke softly. You're the first person who's asked how we were doing. In years. Graham met her eyes. "I won't be the last." After the meeting, he stepped outside into the loading dock area for a breath of air. The city buzzed in the distance. Cool wind moved through the alley, brushing against his sleeves. The hotel wasn't fixed, but it was no longer hiding its cracks. Inside, staff moved with purpose. Guests lingered longer in the lobby. No one was yelling. No one was crying quietly behind a desk. It was progress, not perfection, but it was real. And this time he wasn't watching from a boardroom. He was here, right where he needed to be.